One of my guilty pleasures has been trying out free-to-play games over the last number of years. While most people might think of larger online free-to-play titles like Fortnite or Marvel Rivals, which I do play, I've particularly enjoyed discovering smaller, single-player story games that are also free-to-play. While these are often not as flashy or graphically impressive, these games are often a bit more adventurous in content or mechanics than your more mainline titles. At the same time, these games also tend to be much shorter experiences than others on the market, although this does depend on the game and what you're comparing it to. Over time, I've played a number of these games. These kind of titles aren't the kind that usually gain a lot of popularity, but I've enjoyed my time with them and wanted to share some of my favorites. This list is just focused on games that I've personally played. I'm just one guy and have by no means played all the games out there, even within this narrow slice of games. As always with any of my lists, feel free to share some of your own favorites. I'd love to discover other free-to-play story games to try out and see what I think about them. With that out of the way, let's get to my list. At number 5, I have The Ware Cleaner. So my first entry on the list is actually a game I just finished this month. You might think that beating this game is what gave me the idea for this, but that's not the case. This game actually bumped another game that I had in the 5th spot. It was kind of just a surprise addition that I found another free-to-play story game that I really enjoyed in March, so here it is at spot number 5. The Ware Cleaner is a stealth-based game where you play as a janitor named Kyle who works in an office building. He's trying to finish his week at work so that he can get paid and be able to pay his rent. However, there is a big problem. Kyle is a werewolf, and his work has just implemented mandatory night shift overtime for everyone, or they don't get paid at the end of the week. This means that Kyle has to then clean the messes in the office as a werewolf without being seen or seeing his coworkers. If he sees them, his animal instincts take over and he'll murder them. It's a weird mix of cute art style, humorous setup, while also having a dark side to it all as well. Personally, I thought it was a fun little experience. This definitely has the simplest story of any game on the list, but it was still amusing and you felt the intensity increase throughout the game, particularly because there's a security guard who has found evidence of some kind of creature that has infiltrated the office, and as he eventually puts the pieces together and figures out that it's you, it's kind of neat to see that grow in intensity and reach the climax at the end of the game. I didn't find it too hard to finish this game, but it was a bit more challenging to complete all of the achievements, like beating levels under a certain time or not killing anyone on any of the levels. I was able to complete everything in about 2 hours, but that will probably vary depending on your skill level. At number 4, I have Catgirl. Catgirl is a turn-based RPG at its foundation, but keeping with the weird and chaotic nature of the game, it does include a variety of other genres into the mix. You'll find rhythm, card battler, bullet hell, and mini games, along with a turn-based RPG combat. So the gameplay here is a little bit all over the place, and even the basic turn-based RPG gameplay isn't necessarily super impressive, as it can get a little old over time, but even then, there's enough variety with the gameplay that nothing really wears out its welcome all that fast. Now, this weird and chaotic nature is all over Catgirl. The story has you playing the titular Catgirl on a quest to rescue her dog friend Mop Mop from an evil demon princess who is trying to steal all of the art and artists in the world so that she can have a monopoly on art and make bank. What follows is a quest that is absurd, hilarious, while also being heartwarming. Catgirl is super weird and just embraces that fully. I feel like due to that nature, it's kind of a hard game to describe fully and say why I enjoy it so much. If you're able to handle the absurdity, you may find it an enjoyable time. Again, this isn't a super long game, as I was able to finish the game in about 3.5 hours. I thought it was a good game, but it just might be too weird for some people out there. At number 3, I have Grimm's Hollow. Here's another turn-based RPG on the list. Grimm's Hollow follows Lavender, a girl who wakes up at the start of the game to be told that she's dead and is now a Grim Reaper. She must reap ghosts in order to send them to the afterlife and gain enough energy from this to be able to move on herself. As if this wasn't hard enough to accept on its own, she was with her younger brother Timmy when she died and is wondering if he died as well. So she tries to find if he's in this strange world as well, and if he is, to try to help him in whatever way she could. I really enjoyed Grimm's Hollow. It has a fairly simple turn-based combat, but does include some active elements when attacking with your scythe to mix it up a little bit. What I really loved here was the story. This was a game that looked at mortality and death in both a very real and whimsical way all at the same time. There were some pretty emotional moments in the game, and I overall liked the themes that the game focused on, even if they were a bit sad at times. What I didn't like quite as much was the very purple palette of the game. It wasn't terrible, but I tend to be one who likes more variety of color in general and not less. However, this didn't really detract from my enjoyment of the game. Grimm's Hollow took me a little over 2 hours to complete. For those who also like the options to be able to support small developers like this game also has an option to support by buying a fan pack that includes an art booklet and some wallpapers. At number 2, I have Project Cat and Paper Lily Chapter 1. I'm kind of cheating for this entry. Both of these games are by the same developer, take place within the same universe, and share a lot in common in terms of gameplay and theme. I felt like sticking them together was better than having two very similar games take up 2 out of the 5 slots on this list, so just consider this an added bonus. Both Project Cat and Paper Lily are adventure-style horror games. Both involve girls doing some sort of ritual presented to them in a golden letter. Project Cat is the shorter of the two by far and is about a ritual that takes place in a schoolroom. We aren't really told why Cat is doing what she's doing, but she seems to be looking for someone or something. For such a small game though, there are quite a few endings that you can achieve. Do you follow the instructions of your ritual completely? Do you disregard them in various ways? Do you try to leave instead of finishing out the ritual? Each of these paths can lead you to endings both innocent and gruesome. Paper Lily is a longer game and has a bit more story behind it. Here you follow Lacey, a girl who has been struggling with some kind of curse for a long time. For some reason, her very presence makes people despise and hate her. This has wrecked her as she basically functions as a shut-in, and even leaving to get a coffee is a struggle. There's even hints that her family struggles with her presence as well, except for her brother, but it's unclear whether he just kind of powers through that struggle or whether it just generally doesn't affect him. Regardless though, she has tried all kinds of things to get rid of her condition, but nothing has worked. So now she's received a golden letter and is going to try a ritual that she hopes will finally lead to a solution. She knows it's dangerous, but that's a risk she's willing to take to try to get her life back. This journey takes her to a world that could be strangely beautiful and creepy in very quick succession. The biggest downside to this game is that it is just chapter 1, so there isn't a conclusive ending. I am definitely looking forward to the sequel to this so that I can see where Lacey's story goes from here, and if chapter 2 is the end, I would love to see where that story ends. I like the adventure game feel of both of these games and the fact that you had choices that could affect how things wound up. Project Cat definitely feels more impactful in this way as it has an ending, and each ending feels directly connected to what you did or didn't do in the game. Paper Lily is more expansive and has a more fleshed out story, but doesn't feel quite as impactful. Sure, you can have deaths along the way, but since Paper Lily doesn't really end, it's more about finding the path to surviving to the next part of the story. Despite this difference though, I enjoyed both quite a bit and found them to be impressive games to be offered as free to play. Both of these games do have options to support the developer. Both have supporter packs, and Paper Lily also has the option to buy the soundtrack for the game. So if you did enjoy these games, you do have the option to support them financially if you'd like. And at number 1, I have Our Life Beginnings and Always. In the top spot, I have a bit of a strange entry. The rest of the entries on this list have been fantastical in some way or another. Playing as a werewolf janitor, exploring an absurd fantasy world as a cat girl, journeying in a land between the living and dead, or dealing with supernatural horror. Our Life Beginnings and Always is not really like this at all. Instead, this is more of a slice-of-life visual novel style game. What is pretty impressive about this game is that you have so much control over who your character is. While the game does lead more towards a romance style game between your character and the other lead, Cove Holden, you have the choice not to go that way at all. You can have your character be male, female, non-binary, and can decide to romance Cove or just keep your relationship completely friendly. I played it as a girl lead character who developed a romantic relationship with Cove over the years. While it's pretty impressive how much choice you have, it does sometimes make the game feel a bit awkward. Like it just throws in certain details to show that it's paid attention to your preferences, even though it may not always flow the absolute best in the story that it's trying to tell. Even so, I found this super impressive, and it's just a very wholesome, very enjoyable story with a surprising degree of customization. The structure of the story takes place over 3 summers, technically 4, but the 4th is more of an epilogue than it is anything else. 1, when you are a kid and you first meet Cove, the next is when you are an adolescent, and then the final stage of the base game is when you're a young adult. Each stage of the game has a main bookend story, but there are a variety of events that you can do to help build your relationship and memories with Cove. The free-to-play version of the game has 5 events in each stage. There are then DLCs that can add another 5 events to each phase of life. I found this an interesting and smart way of doing DLC. You can play through it all without spending a cent, but if you enjoyed the game, you can add more to it and support the developers by buying the add-ons. There are also a few DLCs for endgame content. I've only purchased the Wedding Story DLC for Cove, but there are also ones that flesh out the relationships with a couple other male characters in the game if you wanted to romance them or just maybe even learn more about them instead. I get that this game won't be for everyone, but I really thought it was super well done. The characters were relatable and well developed for the most part. The story just had a lot of heart and so many choices that it is a game that I do want to go through another time and maybe change how I did things the first time through. It is also by far the longest game on the list, as I have over 26 hours in the game. Now, that does include time with the DLC as well, but I'd still say it probably has 10 to 15 hours of content just for the free-to-play mode, which is still longer than any other game on my list. And that's my top 5 free-to-play story games. As I think about the list as a whole, there are quite a diversity of titles here. The only repeat genre is turn-based RPG, but even those two games are very different from each other in a lot of ways. This means that I doubt people will fully agree with my list, since many people seem to have stronger preferences for genre than I do, and I don't really know how many people even would have a list like this because I'm not sure how many people go out of their way to play a lot of free-to-play story games. Also, if you are interested in learning more about the games I've mentioned, I will link a review to the game in the video and in the description below. The only game I haven't reviewed separately as of this time is the Ware Cleaner. If I remember, I'll come back and add a link to that after I put that review out. Also, I would love to hear some of your favorite free-to-play story games. While I may not need more games to add to my backlog, I find these games a fun change of pace, and many times I find them just very enjoyable to play. So I would love to hear your recommendations so that I can add them to my list if I haven't played or added them already. That's all for this video though, so I will see you in the next one.